The man's old enemy had somehow become his fiancée. She didn't just show up in his bed right on time every single day. She even refused to leave him alone when he went to take a bath. But who could have imagined that this obedient, sweet-looking girl in front of him would one day become the white demon who destroyed the world? And that man was Clash. At first, everyone saw him as nothing but a complete loser. After all, he had been born into the strongest family on the continent, yet he had none of the battle talent to match it. The only thing he could do was transfer the hero's curses onto himself. But now, Arthur, the leader of the heroes, had fallen into despair, because the enemy standing before them was none other than the legendary undead monarch. After realizing the gap between them was far too massive, Arthur actually chose to give up on the world, and the other three heroes backed him without the slightest hesitation. Watching all of this unfold, Clash barely held back his rage and snapped, "You bastard, what the hell are you doing? Do you have any idea how many people died just to get you all this far?" But then Third Princess Green shouted at him to shut up. "What would a useless nobody like you know? Lord Arthur has already done everything he can. He's completely out of options. Besides, you're just a filthy thief. What gives you the right to lecture my Arthur?" Looking at the ugly expression on her face, Clash could hardly believe what he was seeing. He pointed at her in fury. "How dare you call the man who saved your life trash? Without me, none of you would have ever made it here. Did all of you forget that? Fine. Then let me help you remember." Then Clash turned toward the red-haired girl clinging to Arthur and crying, "Abella, you had no voice, so you couldn't use magic. You were the one who begged me to steal your curse. But while I was suffering under that curse, you attacked me, trying to erase the one person who knew the truth. Heartless as ever. You really haven't changed at all. And you, the woman they call the strongest spear, in reality, you're just an idiot who acts without thinking. Back then, you got cursed because of your own reckless stupidity. And didn't you come crying to me for help?" Right after that, Clash raised a hand and brushed his fingers over his long blinded right eye. "And you bastard, are the worst of them all. Back at the academy, we were even from the same faction. But you targeted me every chance you got, even beating and humiliating me in public, again and again. And in the end, I still took the high road and healed your eyes. Because you were one of the heroes of this era, while I was just a failure who couldn't even fight. I can almost understand those three. But why did you have to be the first one to give up? You're the one with the power to save this world. Back then, you were the reason I agreed to join this party in the first place. So how can you just give up on the world so easily now?" After hearing Clash's words, Arthur showed no emotion at all. He said this was not the first time he had watched the world end. This was because he possessed the broken skill known as time reshaping, which allowed him to start over again and again. And this time, he had even obtained a memory inheritance technique, allowing the other three to keep their current memories when they returned to the past. That way, they could grow stronger faster and lower the chance of the next world ending. When Clash heard that Arthur only planned to bring those three women back with him, he stared at him in disbelief and demanded, "I saved you people over and over again. Why are you taking me with you?" At that moment, Arthur finally stopped hiding his true colors. His face was filled with open contempt and mockery. "Because we don't need a useless nobody like you. Sure, your ability helped us a lot. But why would I waste magic bringing you back with us? We can just find the version of you in another timeline. Wouldn't that be much easier to control? Besides, that version of you can absorb even more negative effects." Only then did Clash realize they had never seen him as a teammate from the very beginning. They had always planned to use him up and throw him away like a disposable tool. "Goodbye, idiot. I'll meet you again in the next life, and I'll use you over and over again." Clash wanted more than anything to stop them, but the negative curses built up inside his body were tearing him apart, and his consciousness was starting to fade. Even so, through sheer willpower, he activated Devour one last time. In truth, his Devour ability could do more than transfer curses. It could even steal skills, but he had never used it on Arthur and the others before because stealing skills was extremely hard to pull off, especially when their skills were all absurdly powerful. But now Clash had no reason to hold back. A vicious mouth appeared in the palm of his hand, and countless streams of pitch-black magic surged out of it. Meanwhile, Arthur, who was in the middle of casting time reshaping, noticed something was wrong. But at first, he only looked down on Clash with disdain. Then he saw Clash smile and point toward the sky. The undead monarch, radiating an aura of destruction, had actually tracked them down. Terror instantly flooded Arthur's face, because his skill had not fully activated yet. If he was killed now, everything would be over. The moment the undead monarch launched its attack, Clash suddenly felt the world around him turn strangely warm. When he opened his eyes and looked around, he realized he had actually been reborn into the past. He never expected the Devour he used at the last second to truly steal Arthur's time reshaping. In other words, Arthur had failed to reincarnate and was left behind in that dying world. But even then, Clash still found it hard to believe, because his ability had one massive flaw. Even if the target was just a random stone on the roadside, as long as its owner considered it precious, the difficulty of devouring it would rise dramatically. That was exactly why stealing someone else's skill was so difficult. But since he had managed to take time reshaping from Arthur, that meant Arthur had been instinctively rejecting that skill all along. Thinking back, Arthur had always been worshipped as the hero king, but he always looked exhausted, like a puppet with no emotions of his own. Maybe, to Arthur, who had lived through the destruction of the world again and again, that skill felt less like a blessing and more like a curse. That was why he wanted those three to keep their memories and reincarnate with him. After sorting out the truth, Clash decided not to dwell on it anymore. He realized he was now at his family's Lansong estate. That meant he had already gone through the family's proof ceremony. It was a ceremony used to test talent and skills. Yet despite being a direct descendant of the main bloodline, Clash had been judged a failure, and that was why he had been sent away to Lansong estate, far from the main family. At that moment, a gentle-looking butler came up to Clash. The moment Clash saw him, he could not help feeling emotional. He never thought he would get another chance to see this man again. But in the next second, Clash's face darkened. "Didn't my brother order you to get rid of me? So when are you planning to poison me?" Hearing that, the butler's face filled with shock and terror. He never imagined that even after hiding it so well, he had still been exposed. In his previous life, Clash had truly trusted him, because even though Clash was considered a failure, this man had always treated him with warmth and respect. But when Clash was 14, that very butler poisoned him and taught him what betrayal really felt like. It turned out that during the proof ceremony not long ago, Clash's older sister Charlotte had barely made a move. Yet, she easily defeated several powerful knights. Not only was she praised as a once-in-a-millennium genius, the family's strongest experts even believed she was destined to become a sword saint. But after witnessing that scene, Clash's half-brother Vero was consumed by jealousy. He became obsessed with wiping out every one of his siblings, so he could take the position of family head for himself. But Charlotte was far too strong, and her mother was also an extremely powerful warrior. So Vero decided to start with Clash, the weakest of his younger brothers. Soon after, he approached Clash's butler. "As long as you make that guy drink this, I'll take care of your daughter's treatment." At first, the butler refused without the slightest hesitation. "I watched the young master grow up. To me, he is like family. There's no way I could ever lay a hand on him." Seeing that, Vero simply threatened him outright. "Is someone else's child more important than your own daughter? If you really can't do it, then prepare yourself to lose her." And so, in Clash's previous life, the butler did end up using the poison. But he did not make Clash drink it. He swallowed it himself because he could not bring himself to hurt Clash. Crushed by guilt, he ultimately chose to leave the world in that way. That was why, in this life, Clash decided to be direct and tell him everything. But after hearing it, the butler could barely understand what was happening. The young master knew he had been betrayed, so he should have been crying or furious. Then why was he so calm? Before the butler could think any further, Clash brought him to one of the rooms. Then, he pointed at the wall behind him and told the butler to destroy it. "You're the butler of the Valheim family, aren't you? Something like this should be easy for you." Hearing that, the butler immediately drew the heavy sword at his waist. The instant he swung it, a deep surge of magical sword energy burst out. The thick wall was sliced open cleanly, revealing an entrance. The butler's eyes widened in shock. He never expected there to be a passage hidden behind the wall. What on earth had happened to the young master? He was completely different from before. For a moment, the butler could even see the shadow of the family head in him. Before long, they reached the end of the passage, where a door wrapped in layers of chains stood before them. "Young master, would you like me to cut through these chains as well?" But this time, Clash did not let the butler act. Instead, he activated his Devour ability. After all, now that he had been reborn, he needed to get used to his power again. In an instant, the magic inside the chains was completely devoured, and the chains shattered apart one after another. Seeing this, the butler was so shocked, he nearly lost his composure. As expected, the young master truly carried the strongest bloodline on the continent, the blood of Valheim. Even if he was not on Lady Charlotte's level, the young master had to possess a terrifying talent that ordinary people could never hope to reach. The butler then bowed solemnly and said, I do not know why you hid your talent during the earlier ceremony, young master. But until you accomplish what you wish to do, I will keep your secret." After hearing the butler's words, Clash fell into thought. This man truly was someone worth trusting. In his previous life, the butler had chosen to drink the poison himself, rather than hurt Clash. To make sure no one could ever threaten him with his daughter again, Clash had to cure her illness as soon as possible. For the current Clash, that should be simple enough. After all, hidden behind this door was the family's secret library. The next second, Clash's eyes widened. A powerful blast of flame suddenly erupted from behind the door. Following the source of the magic, Clash finally found the legendary magic book. Originally, this place had been where the ancestors of the Valheim family stored their magic books. All their techniques and spells had been recorded here in full. Long ago, this place had not been completely sealed. And all of that was because of a man named Demaris. After being corrupted by magic from another world, he became the strongest person of his era, and the strongest figure in Valheim history. Countless powerful warriors standing at the top of the world challenged him, yet not one of them managed to put even a scratch on him. That was because he possessed a twisted secret art that allowed him to absorb the corruptive magic of another world into his own body. In Clash's previous life, this place had been burned down in a great fire, and half of Damaris's magic book had been destroyed. Because of that, Clash had never been able to master that powerful secret art. But in this life, if Clash could fully master it, he might be able to become as powerful as Damaris himself. On top of that, the devouring curse he possessed could erase the side effects of the corruptive magic, preventing him from becoming insane and bloodthirsty like Damaris. So Clash told the butler that he would be training in seclusion here from now on, and that no one was allowed to enter Lanson Estate. Not long after, Vero was so furious that his face twisted. A mere butler had actually dared to refuse him. Charlotte and that useless bastard were both becoming far too much of an eyesore. If that woman had never left her filthy bloodline in the Valheim family, she and Lilith would have secured their place as the true direct heirs long ago. Then Vero angrily ordered his men to head to Lanson Estate and find out exactly why the butler had changed his mind. But his subordinate hesitantly reported that they could not enter Lanson Estate at all. The butler was standing guard outside with a weapon in hand, declaring that no one was allowed inside, not even the family head himself. Hearing this, Vero was shaken, because he knew just how powerful that butler was. Now that the man had fully sided with his useless younger brother, he had become a major threat. Meanwhile, Clash was completely focused on training Damaris's secret art. Before long, he realized he had reached the threshold of an aura expert. This was the line between ordinary people and true geniuses, because most ordinary people would stop at the first stage of aura usage. Thinking of that, Clash could not help but marvel at Charlotte's terrifying talent. She was only 2 years older than him, yet she had practically already reached the realm of an aura master. But even with that overwhelming talent and strength, the Charlotte of his previous life had still failed to stop the world's destruction. At that thought, Clash could not help but wonder if he could truly protect this world. In a daze, he seemed to see the version of himself from the past. Before his rebirth, because of the curse, he could not even use aura. But now, with Demaris's secret art and his own devour ability, he could keep growing stronger without end. When Clash stepped out of the room, he found the butler waiting outside. "Young master, congratulations on stepping into the expert realm. Also, Lady Bianca, your fiancée, has come to visit." The moment Clash heard that name, he was startled. Because in his previous life, Bianca was known as the White Demon. After being corrupted by magic from another world, she became the mastermind who tried to destroy the world. But right now, she was still only the youngest daughter of the Harden family, the Overlord of the North. Before Bianca was even born, her mother had already been exposed to corruptive magic from another world. Because of that, Bianca had been called the emotionless snow doll ever since she was little. And because of that same influence, she could not awaken her talent and was treated coldly by her family. Thinking of this, Clash decided to steal the curse from Bianca's body. That curse happened to work in harmony with Damaris's secret art, and if he took it, he might even be able to change Bianca's tragic future. After spending a short time with him, Bianca quickly noticed that something was off. When they had met before, Clash's attitude had been terrible, but now he seemed like a completely different person, strangely gentle. So she asked him directly if he had suffered a mental breakdown after failing to awaken his talent and being abandoned by his family. Clash did not expect her to ask so bluntly, so he simply revealed his dark, devouring magic. "Do I really seem that different from before?" Seeing that, Bianca thought Clash was angry. She quickly offered a polite bow and apologized. "I'm sorry, I spoke too bluntly earlier. I did not mean to offend you." Looking at Bianca in front of him, Clash could not help falling into thought. She was exactly the same as he remembered from his previous life. Her expression almost never changing. Even in his previous life, when she was dying in the Arctic Sea, she had not shown the slightest wavering. To ease the mood, Clash said he had a proposal. But before he could continue, Bianca stared straight at him and asked, "Is this about our engagement?" Clash did not expect her thoughts to jump that far. How did the conversation suddenly land on their engagement? Actually, I've already been driven out of the main Valheim family. If you want to cancel the engagement, I won't object. But after hearing him, Bianca only let out a quiet sigh. Then, she looked at him seriously and said, "My fiancé is you, not the Valheim family. So why would I break off the engagement with you?" Her blunt words made Clash's face flush slightly. He cleared his throat and forced himself to calm down. Then he slowly reached his hand toward Bianca. "I want the snow doll curse inside you." Hearing that, Bianca was startled. Even the strongest curse breakers were helpless against this curse. Could Clash have given up on himself after being abandoned by his family? To the point that he wanted to use this curse to erase his own emotions? The more Bianca thought about it, the more she felt Clash might have the mental illness she had heard rumors about. Her grandfather, who had been a mind mage, once told her that when someone with a terrible temper suddenly became gentle and cheerful, it was often a sign that they were about to break down. If someone close to her ever became like that, she had to stay by their side. So Bianca took Clash's hand without hesitation. "It's okay. You don't need a curse to overcome this. You just need to control your emotions." Clash's face was filled with confusion. He truly could not understand why she was doing this. But before he could ask, Bianca said she would come visit him often from now on. Or she could simply move in. In Clash's memory, Bianca had always been painfully straightforward. But he still felt like she had misunderstood something. Since things had already turned out this way, Clash decided to secretly try transferring the curse from her body first. A deep, dark magic slowly wrapped around Bianca. But Clash was surprised to discover that transferring this curse would not be easy. A condition lock even appeared. He could only continue once he became her friend. It seemed Bianca had carried this curse since birth, so she already saw it as part of her own body. Because of that, using Devour to transfer the curse became far more difficult. And because Bianca had no emotions due to the curse, she was basically interested in nothing. Becoming her friend would probably be extremely difficult. But Clash could not just leave her alone either. If he did, it would only speed up her transformation into the White Demon. He had to find a way to keep her by his side. That way, he could stop her from becoming the White Demon, while also obtaining the Snow Doll curse, and greatly increasing his own strength. So, Clash held her hand and said, "It would be nice if we could see each other more often. I'm happy to see my fiancé." Hearing that, Bianca stated seriously that she would go home first, talk to her father, and then come back. Clash figured she would probably return in about a month. So before then, he needed to read as many magic books as possible. But to his shock, Bianca appeared in front of him again the very next day. And this time, she had brought her luggage with her. After they lived together for a while, Clash discovered a serious problem. Every morning when he woke up, Bianca would somehow be lying beside him. He had no idea when she crawled over in the middle of the night. "Good morning. But why are you in my bed?" Clash asked. Bianca replied, "That should be my line." Before he knew it, they had already been living together for several months. The thing that troubled Clash was that Bianca followed him everywhere, never leaving his side. Even when he went to take a bath, she refused to leave him alone. But because the Snow Doll curse had left Bianca emotionless since childhood, Clash still had not truly become her friend. On top of that, Clash realized he had already hit a bottleneck. If he wanted to break through, the fastest way was to take Bianca's curse as soon as possible. Because 1 year later, it would be time for Clash to enter Yahello Academy, a hero academy jointly founded by the Four Kingdoms and the Empire. In his previous life, many of its students later became heroes who fought against the invasion from another world, including the 4 people who had betrayed Clash. Clash knew their weaknesses better than anyone. Once he entered the academy, he would be able to steal their skills with ease. Just as Clash was wondering when Bianca would finally see him as a true friend, he suddenly received an invitation from the Star Temple. It was the place where the younger generation of nobles held a gathering every year. In his previous life, Clash had been devastated after being driven out of his family, so he simply ignored the invitation. But this time, he planned to go, because that person would likely appear there. With that person's help, the butler's daughter could be cured. What surprised Clash, however, was that when Bianca heard he was going to attend the gathering, she insisted on going with him. "Those nobles will definitely bully you because you were driven out of your family," As your fiancé, I'll take responsibility and protect you. Hearing that, Clash could not help ruffling her hair. Because of the snow doll curse, Bianca could not express emotion, but that did not mean she was cold inside. At that moment, however, Bianca felt a little gloomy, because she realized Clash always looked at her with pity. Still, the past few months they had spent together had been truly pleasant for her, giving her the first taste of warmth in her gray life. That was exactly why she did not hate this political engagement. On the way to the Star Temple, Bianca slept soundly, while Clash could not help wondering how much manpower and wealth had been poured into building such a place. It was true that nobles were the main force against the invasion from another world, but most of them were useless trash who only knew how to chase pleasure. Who knew how many decent people would actually be at this gathering? The moment Clash entered the hall with Bianca, they drew quite a bit of attention. People whispered that the useless son of the strongest family on the continent and the cursed daughter of the northern ruler were honestly a perfect match. Among them, 3 nobles with a striking presence also looked at Clash with curiosity. He recognized them as people who had joined Arthur's party in his previous life. Of course, the biggest reason they were interested in Clash was probably his older sister, Charlotte. After all, in his previous life, Charlotte had once told Clash that when she attended the Star Temple gathering, she had beaten nearly every noble there into the ground. At that moment, Bianca tugged on Clash's sleeve. She thought he had gone silent because of the nobles whispering about him, so she comforted him and told him not to care about what others said. Seeing that, Clash reached out and patted her head. This little girl was being talked about too, yet she was still worried about him. Just then, a strangely dressed woman suddenly appeared, instantly causing a stir. She was none other than the most dazzling alchemist of the current era, Lord Darling Lien. And in Clash's previous life, she had been obsessed with him to an almost pathological degree, constantly wanting to claim him for herself. But if Clash wanted her help to grow stronger, avoiding contact with her was impossible. So, Clash brought some desserts from the banquet over to Bianca. He told Bianca to wait for him there, and she gave a small nod. Then, Clash walked straight toward Darling Lien. Before long, Lien noticed him and realized he looked strangely familiar. Seeing that, Clash simply revealed that he came from the Valheim family. Only then did Lien suddenly realize he looked a lot like Charlotte. That immediately sparked her interest. You're Charlotte's younger brother, aren't you? So, do you need my help with something? Or were you simply drawn in by my beauty? Clash said directly, I heard you've been researching corruptive magic from another world. The smile on Lien's face instantly froze. After all, that research was undeniably taboo. Little guy, you're pretty bold. You do know what kind of consequences come with saying something like that, right? Then, Lien brought Clash to a private room. Clash had no intention of arguing with her for too long, so he said he wanted to get straight to the point. But Lien smiled and told him not to rush. Then, she tossed the sword in her hand, straight to Clash. Before Clash could even figure out what she was planning, Lien attacked him with her own blade, a split second later. Clash could not help snapping. What the hell are you doing, you lunatic? Why are you suddenly attacking me? But Lien had no intention of stopping. I finally got to meet Charlotte's little brother. Of course I have to test your strength. Based on what Clash knew about her from his previous life, Lien was the kind of person who would never stop until she got what she wanted. So, Clash decided to take things seriously and swung the sword in his hand, straight at her. Feeling the sheer force coming through the blade, Lien found it hard to believe. She had heard Clash was just a failure who hadn't awakened any talent, yet his strength was shocking. After proving his strength, Clash had no intention of wasting more time with her. He directly admitted that he could help her research how to neutralize otherworldly curses. Hearing that, Lien's expression changed sharply, because neutralizing otherworldly curses was practically impossible. She had researched it for a long time without making any real breakthrough, yet Clash, the infamous failure everyone knew about, claimed he could help her. To her, he sounded way too full of himself. So Clash answered with action instead. In a flash, he pressed his blade against Lien's neck. I know you're researching world-corrupting curses that even curse-breakers can't remove, and your method is to cancel them out with other curses. Hearing that, Lien flipped backward and instantly opened up the distance between them. In her eyes, even if Clash knew that secret, there was no way he could actually help her. Then, Clash directly revealed his devouring curse. A vicious mouth instantly appeared in his palm, and deep black magic surged out from within it. Lien's expression changed dramatically. She realized Clash could use Devour to absorb other curses. With that, she would be able to conduct her research as much as she wanted. Then tell me, if I want to cooperate with you, what price do I have to pay? Or are you after my body? Hearing that, Clash quickly cut her off. From now on, I'll be devouring a lot of curses, so I need you to create an alchemy potion that can suppress the side effects. After experiencing the end of the world, Clash understood one thing better than anyone. Even the generation of heroes with absurdly powerful skills had failed to stop the apocalypse. So he had to try every possible method. Secret arts, potions, anything was fine, as long as it made him stronger. At that moment, Leon looked at Clash with growing curiosity. You siblings really are full of surprises. One was an unreachable genius, while the other was a little bastard, wrapped in mystery. As that thought crossed her mind, Leon suddenly began trembling with excitement. Then, she asked Clash if he planned to enroll in Yahello Academy. Clash said of course he did, because that academy gathered the top talents from across the continent, and many of them possessed broken skills and mysterious curses. Hearing that, Leon could no longer hold back her excitement, as if she could already see her future self freely researching all kinds of curses. That's absolutely perfect. I'll do everything I can to help you. All I ask is that you let me stay by your side and conduct my research. Hearing that, Clash told her to start by making a cure for black disease. Leon's face immediately filled with confusion. You do know black disease is terminal, right? How could there possibly be a cure? But Clash had no patience for her complaints, because in the future, the person who created the cure for black disease was Leon herself. So Clash slowly held out his fist toward her. I believe you can do it. If even you can't, then there probably isn't anyone in this world who can overcome that disease. Hearing that, Ween became serious too. Looks like you have a good eye. A mere terminal disease won't be enough to stop me. Then the two bumped fists, officially forming their partnership. As Clash was about to leave, he suddenly stopped. After thinking it over, he decided to say it anyway. If I'm not wrong, you like my sister Charlotte, don't you? But she doesn't like women, so you should give up early. But after hearing that, Ween did not look heartbroken at all. She said she did not only like women, she liked men too. In other words, she was bisexual. Hearing that, every hair on Clash's body nearly stood on end. Then he rushed out of the room as if he were running for his life. When Clash returned to the gathering, he noticed that many people had crowded together, as if something had happened. When he got closer, he realized a young noble was forcefully gripping Bianca's wrist. The man was gripping her so hard that her fair wrist had already turned red. Seeing that, Clash could no longer suppress his anger. He launched a flying kick straight into that bastard's face. The sheer force sent the man flying backward. What the hell do you think you're doing? You were trying to drag my fiancée away by force? The man hurriedly explained that he was only following Princess Claudia's orders. Hearing that, Clash could not help looking toward Bianca, who stood not far away. Because of her curse, nobles had avoided her ever since she was little. So why would that princess suddenly order someone to summon Bianca by force? Clash quickly guessed that someone had to be stirring things up behind the scenes, and the first person he suspected was Annex. Back then, Annex had been a fanatical admirer of Clash's older sister, Charlotte. But after he was completely defeated by Charlotte at the previous gathering, his feelings twisted into a warped mix of hatred and obsession. Of course, Annex knew he was no match for Charlotte, so he shifted his target to Clash instead. If he had come after Clash directly, that would have been one thing, but he actually tried to use Bianca. So Clash took Bianca's hand and headed off to teach Annex a lesson. On the way, Clash asked Bianca why she had not gone with that man earlier, especially since he had brought up the princess's order. Bianca answered without hesitation, because we agreed that I would wait there until you came back. Hearing that, Clash froze for a long moment. Then he could not help patting her head again. Before long, the two of them arrived at the end of the corridor, and waiting there was a white tiger beast woman. The moment Clash saw her, cold sweat nearly broke out on his forehead, because in his previous life, this woman had always been a little unhinged, constantly picking fights for no reason. Just as Clash thought he could avoid dealing with her, she suddenly leaned in with curiosity all over her face. I've been interested in you ever since you arrived at the gathering. Come on, let's have a proper fight. To be honest, Clash really did not want to fight her, because even among aura experts, she was extremely strong. Her terrifying battle instincts made it almost impossible to predict what her next move would be. But Clash also knew very well that she was the type who would never give up until she got what she wanted. So he decisively gathered devouring magic in his hand. Sure enough, a split second later, she swung her claws at Clash without the slightest warning. Fortunately, Clash had already been on guard and dodged in time. Then, he seized the opening and kicked her hard. While her defenses were down, Clash raised his fist and drove it straight into her stomach. A moment later, she was lying on the floor, clutching her stomach and howling. After a while, she finally stood back up slowly. "You really don't know how to go easy on a lady. How could you hit me that hard?" Clash simply replied, "Aren't you the one who challenged me first? If you start a fight, you better be ready to get hurt." Seeing this, the white tiger beast woman clearly had no intention of letting things end there. She suggested they use weapons and fight another round, but Clash asked her in return, "Can you really keep fighting right now?" She had just confidently replied, "Of course." But a split second later, a wave of dizziness hit her, and she collapsed straight to the floor. Bianca, who was standing beside him, asked Clash how he had done it. Clash said he had only used a small technique from the Valheim family. Short Force was a move that unleashed maximum power in the shortest possible time. It was also the only secret art Clash had mastered before his rebirth, and it had carried him through countless life-or-death battles. It looked like the white tiger beast woman would not be waking up anytime soon. All that remained was to beat the hell out of that bastard Anix. "Honestly, you really surprised me. I never thought you'd even defeat Balak the white tiger." Clash had no patience for his nonsense. "You had the second princess send someone after my fiancé earlier, just to draw me out, didn't you?" Hearing that, Anix's lips curled into a cold smile. "I didn't expect a useless fool like you to figure that out." Clash said that as long as he beat Anix into the ground today, all those rumors about him being useless would naturally begin to change. Of course, that was not his only goal. More importantly, he wanted to steal Anix's skill too. Back in his previous life, Clash had spent a long time with Anix. From the academy all the way to the war against the otherworldly invasion, they had been on the same team. But during a later operation, Anix's mistake caused every other teammate to die. Clash was left hanging off the edge of a cliff, barely clinging to life. Yet, Anix had no intention of helping him, because he believed that if the truth got out, he would lose all the reputation and status he had spent years building. As long as he was the only survivor, no one would ever know what really happened that day. In the end, he even shamelessly said to Clash, "Thanks for everything. As my friend, help me one last time, and die in peace." The moment Clash heard him say the word friend, anger flashed across his face. "Don't think I don't know. Back then, you only joined my team so you could get close to my sister, Charlotte." Once his mask was exposed, Anix stopped pretending. With a wicked smile on his face, he simply left. Clash had no idea how much time passed before his strength finally ran out. He could no longer hold on, and in the end, Arthur was the one who saved him. Now that Clash had finally been given a second life, there was no way he would let this bastard off easily. Just as Clash drove his magic forward and threw a punch at Anix, a wooden vine suddenly appeared and blocked his attack. Seeing that, Clash used the vine as support and instantly changed direction. Then he stomped down hard, but unfortunately, that strike was blocked by another vine as well. And this time, Anix grabbed Clash's ankle and flung him away. Fortunately, Clash reacted quickly and landed steadily with proper technique. This guy was just as troublesome as he had been in his previous life. Anix's skill allowed him to strengthen and control plants with magic. Combined with his recovery trait, ordinary attacks were practically useless against him. Seeing this, Clash casually picked up a wooden vine from the ground. "Since you're using weapons, I'll use your own plants to teach you a lesson." Hearing Clash talk so boldly, Anix's face instantly twisted with rage. Then he controlled countless vines and launched a furious attack toward Clash. But to his shock, he realized Clash was dodging every single strike with incredible agility. Seeing that, Anix immediately started to panic. For a brief moment, he could vaguely see Charlotte's shadow in Clash. And while Anix was still stunned, Clash had already broken through layer after layer of vines and rushed right in front of him. But just then, a surge of emerald green magic suddenly erupted from Anix's body. The moment he raised his hand, it was as if he had summoned a massive monster. Clash was instantly blown back by the shockwave. When he looked closely, he realized Anix had created a titan-like giant out of wood. Seeing this, Anix's subordinates were shocked. In their eyes, there was no way Clash could withstand this move. He would be crushed into dust in an instant. But in the face of that crisis, Clash was completely unfazed. In his mind, he recalled a secret art left behind by one of the ancestors in the hidden library. That ancestor had mediocre talent, yet he swung his sword like a madman every single day. In the end, his understanding of the sword reached an almost inhuman level. Then, Clash slowly raised the wooden vine in his hand. The next moment, he opened his eyes sharply and performed the simplest sword swing. But an instant later, the massive wooden titan was sliced cleanly in half. Everyone who saw it could hardly believe their eyes. No one could have imagined that a mere wooden vine could unleash such terrifying power. "Stop acting so arrogant, bastard. From now on, when you see me, keep your tail tucked and behave." At this point, Anix had completely broken down and collapsed to the floor. Clash, meanwhile, had exhausted his magic and felt all strength leave his body. Even his consciousness was starting to blur. He had planned to save some magic to steal Anix's skill, but that move had consumed far more than he expected. Now, he could barely move at all. Just as Clash was about to collapse, Bianca stepped forward in time and caught him in her arms. But because she was too emotional, she failed to control her strength and almost sent Clash straight to the afterlife. In the end, Darling Leon had to carry Clash away on her back, and that duel quickly caused quite a stir, because no one had expected the so-called useless young master of the strongest family on the continent to defeat such a famous genius. After some time passed, Clash had fully recovered, and because of the move he had used earlier, his swordsmanship had reached a shocking level. Clash also began reassessing his Devour ability. There were usually two ways to steal a skill. The first was to forcefully seize it with devouring magic. The second was to make the holder doubt the value of their own skill. Once they were crushed in battle, they would instinctively begin questioning that skill. And, once that happened, Clash's chance of successfully devouring it would rise dramatically. Although he had failed to devour Anix's skill on the spot earlier, a seed of doubt had already been planted in Anix's mind. All Clash had to do was wait for the right chance, and he could easily take that skill for himself. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Clash. It was his half-brother Vero. "How ridiculous. All you do is fool around with your fiancé." Clash replied that even the strongest people needed rest from time to time. Hearing that, Vero was startled, because in his mind, Clash had always been terrified of him. Normally, Clash would not even dare to look him in the eye, yet now he dared to talk back to him in public. Before Vero could recover, Clash continued. "I heard Rahel Academy's selection is based on exam results, not status. If you fail to get in, you'll probably disgrace the name of Valheim, the strongest family on the continent." Vero's face darkened at once. This bastard was actually mocking him. But at the same time, an inexplicable panic rose inside him. The Valheim family was so powerful that even the Empire was unwilling to oppose them lightly. But the competition inside the family was also extremely fierce. If Vero truly failed Rahel Academy's selection, he might immediately lose his chance to compete for the position of heir. Although Vero was furious, he still forced himself to stay calm and addressed Clash. "We're heading to the Glirak Mountains for a mission. If you really defeated Anix like the rumors say, then surely you wouldn't be afraid of a mission like that." Clash agreed without hesitation, because his strength could only grow quickly through constant devouring. On top of that, this was the perfect chance to train the founder's strongest secret art. But Bianca, who stood beside him, looked completely puzzled. Logically speaking, making an underage child take part in such a dangerous mission was absurd. Clash did not expect Bianca to publicly stand up to Vero on his behalf, and Vero's face was already filled with anger. Just as Vero was about to teach Bianca a lesson, Clash stepped directly in front of her. "She's my fiancé. You wouldn't seriously take the words of a 12-year-old child to heart, would you?" Vero was furious. But seeing that Clash had no intention of backing down, he simply snorted coldly and left. Clash fondly patted Bianca on the head. "Nicely done. Looks like you really pissed him off." And knowing how dangerous the trip would be, Bianca told Clash not to pass out again like he had last time. Not long after, Clash and the others arrived at the Glirak Mountains. This place had long been corrupted by otherworldly magic and was no longer suitable for living. Even they could only enter while wearing masks. Vero walked up to Clash and looked down at him arrogantly. "Don't think reaching the threshold of an aura expert means you can get full of yourself. Someone with no experience like you has no idea how terrifying this place really is." On the surface, Clash just smiled and said he understood. But in reality, in his previous life, he had spent almost his entire life fighting against the otherworldly invasion. In terms of experience alone, there were probably very few people who could compare to him. More importantly, Clash had come here to test the founder's strongest secret art. Once he mastered it, his strength would make a massive leap. After some time passed, Vero was shocked to realize that there was not even a trace of fear on Clash's face. Not only was Clash calmly cutting down the attacking monsters, he was also skillfully teaching the others how to survive in this place. Seeing the knights look at Clash with admiration, Vero's face darkened with jealousy. After all, when Vero had first come here on a mission, he had been so terrified that he fled in panic, making himself look utterly pathetic. The more he thought about it, the more unhinged he became. If this younger brother kept growing, he might become the next Charlotte. And when that happened, Vero would become the failure among the family's heirs. Not long after, they reached the deepest part of the Glirak Mountains. Feeling the thick otherworldly corruptive magic in the air, the knights could not help showing panic on their faces. But Clash seized the chance to quietly remove his mask and began greedily absorbing the corruptive magic. But an instant later, he coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground. The violence of this magic truly exceeded Clash's expectations, but that was exactly why it could make him stronger. Then, Clash quietly activated the founder's secret art and began fusing the corruptive magic with his own body. Before long, he felt a surge of madness rush through him. Any ordinary person with a weak mind would probably lose their sanity in an instant. But Clash did not panic at all. Instead, he activated another secret art. After the founder Demaris's twisted secret art had been completely sealed away, a blind ancestor created an extremely powerful secret art of his own. It was the Sixth Sense, a technique that granted the user supernatural perception. With the help of the Sixth Sense, the side effects of the founder's secret art were greatly reduced. But as long as Clash continued absorbing otherworldly corruptive magic, there would eventually come a day when he could no longer suppress that violent energy. That was why, in the end, he still needed the Snowdoll curse inside Bianca. Only then could he truly neutralize the side effects of the founder's secret art. But right then, Clash suddenly sensed a terrifying presence. When he turned around, he saw a vicious monster, standing dangerously close. The monster had a strange human face, growing on its head. As if it possessed some kind of mimicry ability, it had silently appeared right beside Clash. Seeing this, Vero paled in shock. He could not understand why such a terrifying monster had appeared in the Glirak Mountains. After all, this was the Thousand-Faced Ghost, a creature with an extremely high danger rating. So Vero immediately ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Then he activated his skill and transformed into a flame state, his entire body burning with violent fire that carried an aura of destruction. Seeing this, Clash froze for a moment, because in his previous life, Vero had used that very skill to burn his arm, leaving behind a scar that could never be healed. But this time, that skill was going to belong to Clash. He quietly activated his devouring curse, waiting for the moment Vero's mind collapsed before making his move. At that moment, the knights had almost no ability to resist. The instant they came into contact with the Thousand-Faced Ghost, their souls were nearly stolen. Then, Vero suddenly unleashed several slashes of sword energy, forcing the Thousand-Faced Ghost back. In the next moment, raging flames completely engulfed it. Seeing this, the knights burst into cheers. Lord Vero truly is a direct descendant of Valheim, the strongest family. Even the legendary Thousand-Faced Ghost is being completely suppressed by him. Listening to their praise, Vero's ego swelled. Then, he began searching for Clash. "Brat, did you see my strength? This is a height you will never reach." But an instant later, Vero was shocked to realize that Clash was not looking at him at all. Instead, his eyes were locked onto the Thousand-Faced Ghost. Sensing that something was wrong, Vero hurriedly turned back. Only then did he discover that his flames had not burned the Thousand-Faced Ghost to ashes. Instead, they had pushed it into a berserk state. Every human face on its body was now weeping black tears of blood. That eerie sight filled Vero with an inexplicable fear. To prevent the situation from getting any worse, he decisively attacked again. At the same time, he called for all the knights to launch an attack together. But Vero realized that not a single person responded. At first, he thought the knights had been scared stiff and no longer dared to fight. Yet when he turned back to scold them, he found every one of them standing there in silence, completely frozen. It was the Thousand-Faced Curse, but they had not even touched the Thousand-Faced Ghost. When had they been cursed? Suddenly, Vero was horrified to discover that half of his own face had vanished as well. That meant he had also been struck by the Thousand-Faced Curse. After feeling the overwhelming difference in strength between them, Vero no longer had the courage to face the Thousand-Faced Ghost. Even his own skill had unknowingly deactivated. By the time he came back to his senses, he was already running away. Why was something like this happening to him? And right then, it was as if he heard the whisper of a demon. "You lost all your knights and ran for your own life like a coward. That is exactly why you failed." Before long, the Thousand-Faced Ghost caught up and condensed a massive hand from its eerie corruptive magic. Seeing this, Vero hurriedly drew his sword and tried to block it. But he was still a step too slow, and the giant hand struck his arm directly. After an unknown amount of time, Vero finally woke up from unconsciousness and realized he was being dragged along the ground. When he looked carefully, he saw that the one dragging him was actually his youngest brother. Seeing that Vero had woken up, Clash explained, "When you were fighting earlier, I was watching from a distance. After the monster activated the Thousand-Faced Curse, all of you lost the ability to resist. Luckily, I avoided looking at the thousand-faced ghost, and used the chance to get you out. After hearing Clash's words, Vero struggled free from him, and stubbornly claimed he did not need Clash to save him. Clash asked in return, "You can't even use magic in your current state. Are you sure you don't need my help?" At first, Vero arrogantly insisted that he needed no help at all, but a split second later, the sound of the monster scared him into a cold sweat, and he hurriedly asked Clash how much farther they had to go before leaving the corrupted zone. Clash said they had already walked for a long time, yet still had not reached the edge. Most likely, this corrupted zone had been completely sealed off, and the only way to leave was to kill the thousand-faced ghost. Vero had sunk completely into despair. So, Clash lied and said Charlotte had taught him a secret art, and that was also why he had been able to defeat Annex earlier. "You may not believe in my strength, but you trust Charlotte's power, don't you? As long as you give me a small portion of authority over your flame skill, I can combine it with the secret art Charlotte taught me and unleash tremendous power." In the end, with his mental defenses completely broken, Vero had no choice but to compromise. And with a single slash, Clash instantly killed the thousand-faced ghost that had driven countless knights into despair. After witnessing all of this, Vero broke out in a cold sweat. In his mind, Clash had always been a useless nobody. He never imagined Clash had been hiding such terrifying power. Even worse, Vero was horrified to discover that he could no longer use his flame skill. Furious, he swung his sword at Clash and demanded to know what he had done. But at this point, Clash stopped pretending and fully revealed his devouring magic. "You idiot. My target was your skill from the very beginning." As it turned out, the conditions Clash needed to steal Vero's skill were actually very simple. First, Vero had to voluntarily hand over partial authority over the skill. Second, Vero had to believe that Clash was better at using that skill than he was. And Clash's earlier slash had completely shattered Vero's pride, allowing Clash to steal the skill effortlessly. Then Clash swung his sword at Vero without mercy. Vero collapsed to the ground in agony, screaming non-stop. But Clash had no intention of letting him off that easily. After all, Vero had bullied him ever since they were children. At first, Clash had once wanted to repair their relationship as brothers. But later, Vero tried to kill him again and again. "In my previous life, when you burned my face and arm with your flames, I was just like you are now, writhing and screaming on the ground in pain." Before long, Vero stopped struggling and stopped breathing completely. After that, Clash returned to the family as the only survivor of the mission. Vero's butler screamed hysterically, "Why did Lord Vero have to fall, while that failure came back alive?" The chief butler immediately warned him to watch his words. "As a servant, you have no right to speak about the young masters like that." And according to the young master, Lord Vero sacrificed himself to protect him. Seeing this, Clash felt much more at ease. It seemed they did not suspect him. Not only had he mastered the strongest secret art to absorb corruptive magic and strengthen himself, but he had also fused it with Vero's flame skill, obtaining a new skill called Flame of Destruction. Not long after, a woman claiming to be from the Corruption Investigation Bureau came looking for him. It turned out that the area where they had carried out the mission had suddenly shown a sharp rise in otherworldly corruption, and even an extremely dangerous monster, like the thousand-faced ghost, had appeared. But when Clash saw the black star on her neck, he could not help feeling startled. So he decided to lay everything out directly. "I want to make a deal with you. As payment, I can help you remove your immortality." Since Clash had exposed her hidden identity in a single sentence, she simply revealed her true form. "Little one, are you a regressor?" Clash was not surprised that she could guess his identity. After all, immortals had endless lifespans and had naturally seen all kinds of absurd skills. How arrogant. A regressor trapped in an endless time loop claims he can erase someone like me, someone who has surpassed time itself. Seeing that, Clash answered with action. A vicious mouth instantly appeared in his palm. Then intense devouring magic surged out of it, rushing toward the immortal. Feeling that terrifying curse that seemed capable of devouring everything, she felt a fatal threat for the first time in ages. Ever since the otherworldly immortal planted the curse of immortality on her, she had spent hundreds of years madly increasing the corruption level of this world, because only then could she finally reach her end. And now, someone capable of devouring curses had actually appeared. So she suppressed her excitement and asked Clash what he wanted her to do. Clash said he needed her to help him grow stronger as quickly as possible, because only then could he fully devour the curse inside her. Hearing that, she could no longer hold back her joy. Powerful and sinister energy swirled around her body. "I, Scarlet Moon, will make you the strongest person in this world." Feeling that overwhelming presence, Clash could not help being shocked. He knew very well that immortals afflicted by that curse would have their true bodies fall into slumber. The scarlet moon in front of him was actually only a magic projection. Even so, she possessed suffocating power. In his previous life, Scarlet Moon had once driven them into a desperate situation. Her own strength rivaled Arthur's, and she also commanded an endless army of servants. When Scarlet Moon saw Clash standing there in silence without responding, she smacked him on the head. Just as the two were about to leave, a cloaked woman suddenly appeared in front of Clash. "Young master, your mother has summoned you." Hearing that, Clash was a little surprised. Ever since he had been judged a failure and driven out of the main family, his mother had never shown herself. Before Clash could respond, the cloaked woman continued. "The family head sent word. Once he returns from the Forbidden Land, he intends to meet with you, young master. That is why Lady Arya wants you to remain here until the family head returns and sees you." Hearing that, Clash was deeply shocked. After all, his father was rumored to be a demigod-level warrior. There was a chance he could see through Clash's secret. "Since this isn't an order personally given by my father, I'll head back for now. When father summons me, I'll return. Or perhaps he'll come find me himself." After that, Clash left the main family, while Scarlet Moon transformed into a crow to avoid drawing attention. Only after Clash kept persuading her did she finally change her feathers to black. "Now I look like a crow, right? Look at my feathers. They're as black as your soul." Not long after, Clash finally arrived back at Lansong Estate, and Bianca, who had heard he was returning, had apparently been waiting for him for God knows how long. Just then, the butler hurried over and said, "Darling Lian had sent a letter." When Clash opened it, he discovered that she had actually created a cure for black disease and would personally deliver it soon. So Clash told the butler to be careful and respectful when Lian visited, because she would become his benefactor. After all, the butler's daughter was suffering from the terminal illness known as black disease. At that moment, the butler quietly told Clash that Lady Bianca had actually been very worried about him. After hearing that Clash had been affected by corruptive magic, she had kept insisting on going to the main family to see him. After hearing the butler's words, Clash finally remembered that he had not checked Bianca's curse lock in a long time. Then, to his surprise, he discovered that the first unlock condition, becoming her friend, had already been completed. That meant he was only one final step away from fully transferring the curse inside Bianca. When that happened, Bianca would gain emotions, and Clash's strength would also undergo a complete transformation. But what Clash never expected was that the second unlock condition was for him to become her lover. At that moment, Bianca noticed Clash staring at her in silence, and her innocent little face was filled with pure confusion. To hide his embarrassment, Clash directly handed her the crow that Scarlet Moon had transformed into. Scarlet Moon was held in Bianca's arms and petted for quite a while before finally escaping. Then she immediately flew onto Clash's head and took fierce revenge. "That little girl looks ice cold, but she seems to like you quite a bit." Then, Scarlet Moon suddenly changed the subject. "Playtime is over. Next, I want to test your strength." Sometime later, Clash lay on the ground, completely exhausted. Scarlet Moon, however, was genuinely shocked. She had not expected Clash's talent to be this bad. Although his current strength was enough to crush geniuses his own age, that was only because he had the rich experience of his previous life. At this rate, it probably would not be long before those true geniuses surpassed him. But you don't need to worry. After all, you possess a special ability that can devour everything, and I'll do everything I can to help you, until you become strong enough to devour my immortality. Not long after, Darling Lian came looking for Clash. The moment Clash remembered that this woman went after both men and women, it gave him the creeps. He immediately asked if she had brought the item. Right after that, Lian proudly took out a small bottle, and inside it floated a special potion. Looking at the potion in front of him, Clash could not help feeling shocked. He never expected her to complete it in such a short time. As expected of the future king of alchemy, when Lian heard Clash call her a genius, she could not hide the joy on her face at all. She happily lunged toward him, and luckily Clash stopped her in time before she could get her way. "Oh right, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Annex has been acting strange lately. After losing to Charlotte before, he stopped training. But ever since you crushed him, he has started training seriously again." Clash had not expected himself to actually reignite that guy's fighting spirit. At that moment, Scarlet Moon suddenly spoke directly into Clash's mind, saying that this alchemist seemed quite capable and could be used to make elixirs that would increase his strength. Clash said he did not have any elixir formulas. After all, elixirs were extremely valuable, and their formulas were usually owned only by a few ancient families. But, to an immortal who had lived for countless years, that was naturally no problem. Scarlet Moon told Clash to repeat the elixir formula after her. At first, Lian did not seem to care much. After all, elixir formulas were not something a person could just casually obtain, but after hearing only a few lines, her expression immediately turned to shock. She quickly took out a notebook and hurriedly wrote down the formula Clash recited. Where did you get this? If an elixir can really be made according to this formula, its effects would be absurdly powerful. Clash lied and said the formula was a secret inheritance of the Valheim family. Only then did Leon stop asking. After all, as the strongest family, it made sense for Valheim to possess such a god-tier formula. However, the most urgent issue now was how to obtain the required materials. The first was the frost snow mushroom, which grew in the far north, and was almost impossible for most people to find. Clash said they could ask Bianca about that, since the far north was her family's territory. The remaining ingredient was golden dragon grass, which only grew near dragon nests in remote regions of the Empire. It could technically be bought on the black market, but if the Empire discovered it, things would get troublesome. Leon said she had a better way. The Empire was currently holding a martial arts tournament, and the reward for first place happened to be golden dragon grass. In the few days before departure, Clash underwent hellish training under Scarlet Moon. Now, he could finally block her attacks with his heightened perception. Scarlet Moon explained that what she had taught him was a technique for sensing an enemy's attack before it happened. Combined with Clash's own talent, instincts, and the secret art Sixth Sense, his strength was now infinitely close to the next realm. Once Lien finished developing that elixir, his physical body would also undergo a transformation. By then, Clash's movements would finally be able to keep up with his thoughts, making him even stronger. Before setting out, Clash specifically asked Lien for a transformation potion that could disguise his identity. But looking at the potion in his hand, he felt strangely nervous. After all, the last time he drank one of Lien's potions, he had turned into a woman. This time, he could only hope she had not slipped in some twisted little joke. Before long, the butler found a merchant for Clash, allowing him to slip into the merchant's convoy to hide his tracks. Then, the butler solemnly promised Clash that while he was away, he would not allow anyone to step into Lansong Estate or expose Clash's true whereabouts. As it turned out, not long before this, Clash had given him the cure for the terminal illness known as Black Disease. The butler trembled as he thanked Clash for curing his daughter, saying that he could now die with no regrets. After all, Vero had once threatened him with his daughter's life and forced him to poison Clash. Of course, Clash did not blame him. He knew the butler would never truly hurt him. In his previous life, the man had chosen to drink the poison himself rather than harm Clash. Since I saved your daughter's life, stop saying stupid things like dying to atone. From now on, keep serving me. By then, the butler was already in tears, crying out that he would survive no matter what, and remain loyal to Clash. This time, Bianca did not travel with Clash. To gather all the materials needed for the elixir, they decided to split up. Bianca would return to her family and help Clash search for the frost snow mushroom. On the road to the Empire, Clash did not slack off. He continued killing otherworldly monsters along the way. Then he absorbed the corruptive magic inside them to strengthen himself. But what Clash did not expect was that a group of bandits would attack the merchant convoy. Looking at the girl's beautiful figure, wicked smiles appeared on all their faces. It was obvious they had no intention of letting her go easily. The girl looked at the greedy bandits and fell into despair. Was she really going to be humiliated by them like this? But right then, a dark sword aura suddenly flashed past, instantly killing the two bandits closest to her. Clash stood there with the flame of destruction gathered in his hand, his expression completely murderous. No matter the time or place, trash like you always crawls out to cause trouble. The bandit leader was shocked. This child had actually killed two of his men instantly. At first, however, he was not too afraid. He assumed Clash had only succeeded because of a sneak attack. So he immediately ordered all his men to attack. Clash simply waved his hand, and his sword flew into his grasp from a distance. Then, he casually swung the blade and wiped out every last bandit. Not a single one of them could withstand even one strike. At this point, the bandit leader finally panicked. A mere kid had wiped out all his men. There was no way an ordinary child could do that. So he guessed that Clash had to be a wealthy young master from some prestigious family, which meant he must be carrying even more riches. Without hesitation, the bandit leader swung his axe and attacked Clash. But every full-powered strike he unleashed with his magic was effortlessly blocked by Clash. What enraged him even more was that Clash had not used any magic while defending, making the humiliation cut even deeper. So the bandit leader immediately decided to use that secret art. He raised his battle axe high above his head. Clash also held his sword horizontally, preparing to block the attack. But a flash of wild joy passed through the bandit leader's eyes. brat, you finally fell for it. The axe that had been coming down from above suddenly changed its path without warning and slashed toward Clash's waist. This was the secret art he had mastered, Phantom Battle Axe. But a split second later, flames filled with an aura of destruction burst from Clash's body. Under the impact of those flames, the bandit leader's attack instantly lost all force. Clash's face was now filled with anger. If you can use the secret art Phantom Battle Axe, that means you're one of the Butcher Hound's men, right? The Butcher Hound had already been infamous in Clash's previous life. At first, he had been a vicious serial killer. Later, after being corrupted by otherworldly magic, he became a servant of the otherworldly immortal. Just like Clash's fiancée, Bianca, he once tried to sneak into the Empire to carry out a massacre, only to run into Clash's older sister, Charlotte. And that was how his sinful life finally came to an end. That incident was also what made Charlotte truly famous. After all, a 16-year-old girl had defeated a world destroyer. But now, Clash felt a faint sense of unease. There was still a long time before the Butcher Hound was supposed to infiltrate the Empire. So why had one of his men appear here? A strong sense of danger rose in Clash's heart. He immediately decided that once he obtained the golden dragon grass, he would leave this troublesome place as quickly as possible. Not long after, at the registration area for the martial arts tournament, the crowd was packed, and a delicate-looking little girl stood above them, watching everyone with bright excitement. She was none other than the Empire's little princess, Cicely. There must be plenty of talented people in this tournament. I'm going to bring them all to Yahello Academy. Her maid beside her sighed helplessly. If His Majesty finds out, he might faint from anger on the spot. Don't mention my father. The second you say that, I feel like I can already hear his voice in my ear. Looking at the little princess in front of her, the maid, Sarah, could not help feeling the sense of pity. After all, a few years ago, Cicely had been an unrivaled genius, admired by everyone. Even those great figures once said that Princess Cicely might one day rewrite the history of the Empire. But that also made Cicely sense a deadly crisis, because she understood very well that possessing a treasure without the strength to protect it was a crime in itself. She had no powerful faction backing her. If she got dragged into the imperial succession struggle, she would likely lose her life very quickly. So, in order to survive, she deliberately pretended to be arrogant and unruly, all so everyone would think she was just an ignorant little princess. And her acting was truly impressive. Ever since she was 7, she had behaved like an out-of-control troublemaker. In the end, even the powerful figures who had once praised her all believed they had misjudged her. At that moment, Cicely seemed to notice something interesting, and her eyes lit up as she looked somewhere below. Sarah, look at that person. He's giving off such a dark and sinister aura, and there's a pitch-black crow on his shoulder. He looks like a total villain. Maybe he's someone sent by the Valheim family, the Empire's mortal enemy. And she was right. That was exactly what Clash looked like after taking the transformation potion. Then, Cicely suddenly leaped down from the balcony. Sarah, don't underestimate my intuition. I'm going to meet him. After landing, Cicely hurriedly ran through the area, searching for Clash. But in her rush, she accidentally tripped over someone. Just as Cicely was about to fall flat on the ground, Clash caught her in his arms, just in time. The princess was startled, because she had not sensed Clash nearby at all. Little one, watch where you're going. Don't be so reckless next time. Watching Clash walk away, Cicely stood frozen for a long time. Then, surprise flashed across her face. Judging from his calm tone and attitude, could he have already figured out her identity? After Clash successfully registered for the martial arts tournament, he planned to find an inn and rest. But because the tournament was far too popular, every nearby inn was already full. Just as Clash thought he would have to sleep on the streets tonight, a kind-looking old woman suddenly approached him. Little one, are you here for the tournament? If you need a place to stay, you can come with me. Scarlet Moon, who was beside him, thought the old woman looked extremely suspicious, but Clash had already stepped right in front of her and accepted her offer. Seeing that, Scarlet Moon said angrily, "Has no one ever told you not to trust strangers so easily?" Clash replied that he had slept outdoors far too often in his previous life, and was already sick of it. Besides, he did not sense any malice from the old woman. After that, they followed her out of the city and into the outskirts. Little one, you can use the room at the end of the hall on the second floor. Once dinner is ready, I'll call you down. After reaching the second floor, Clash planned to get some proper rest, only to find an unexpected guest. It was none other than the little princess he had just met, Cicely. With her noble status, there was no way she would be staying in a small place like this. Clearly, Clash had fallen into her trap and been led here on purpose. To avoid getting tangled up with her, Clash decided to ignore her and head straight into his room. But Cicely immediately moved closer. How strange. I'm obviously this cute, yet you keep avoiding me. Don't tell me you like boys instead. Hearing that, Clash could not help thinking of Leon. Then, he said irritably, there are plenty of people in this world prettier than you. Why do I have to be interested in you? But Cicely refused to let it go, and kept asking who was cuter than her. Seeing how persistent she was, Clash simply headed downstairs. Cicely immediately followed him. Let's eat together. I'm hungry too, and we can use dinner to get to know each other better. Clash waved her off and said there was no need, because he had no interest in her at all. After hearing that, Cicely's tone instantly turned gloomy. Even knowing that I'm a princess, you still treat me like this? Mr. Cred from the Valheim family. Clash had not expected her to accurately guess his identity after only 2 brief encounters. I never admitted I'm from the Valheim family, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Children should eat dinner and go to bed early, not run around making wild guesses. Hearing that, Cicely immediately snapped in frustration. I'm not a child. I'm just developing a tiny bit slower than normal. The maid beside her, Sarah, could not help asking curiously, Your Highness, is that person really from the Valheim family? Cicely nodded. Yes, I'm certain. Even if their language sounds very close to the Empire's pronunciation, those tiny differences in tone can't be hidden. Hearing that, Sarah was shocked, because she had not noticed any difference in his voice at all. What she did not know was that Cicely possessed an extremely special ability. She had a keen ability to detect and analyze almost anything. Strange. Judging from his reaction, he seems to know me very well, but I have absolutely no memory of him. Hearing that, Sarah immediately asked if they needed to interrogate Clash, but Cicely stopped her on the spot. She thought this person was interesting and worth observing for a while longer. Then, Cicely asked Sarah whether she had found any information about her older sister, Sigrun. She had sharply noticed that ever since a year ago, Sigrun had seemed like a completely different person, becoming terrifying in a way she could not ignore. She was nothing like the person she used to be, and that gave Cicely a deep sense of danger. After hearing Sarah's report, Cicely became fully convinced of her own instincts. At this rate, the first prince and second prince would probably both be eliminated by Sigrun. And when that happened, Cicely herself would likely have no way to escape either. The next day, the martial arts tournament officially began. Clash defeated the competitor on the stage in a single instant. Every spectator who saw it was stunned, and many began guessing that he was not human at all, but some ominous creature from hell, especially because of the crow on his shoulder. No matter how intense the battle became, it never once left his shoulder. Clash successfully passed the preliminary round, and at the moment, only 4 people had made it into the finals. After that, when Clash entered the rest area, he found someone waiting there. That person was also one of the finalists. You are incredibly strong, and you have a crow standing on your shoulder the whole time. You must be from the assassination family, Night Crow, right? Night Crow was one of the most dangerous forces in the Empire's underworld, and it would become one of the reasons for the Empire's future decline. Clash replied, You seem to have misunderstood. I'm not from the Night Crow family. Hearing that, the man awkwardly waved his hand and said he had gotten it wrong. Then, he hurriedly tried to leave, but watching his behavior, both Clash and Scarlet Moon felt something was off. So Scarlet Moon spread her wings and chased after him directly. An instant later, the man seemed to be wrapped in a strange power, and his mind began to grow hazy. It turned out Scarlet Moon had cast brainwashing magic on him. For a short while, he would answer Clash's questions without holding anything back. From him, Clash learned that Night Crow had recently fallen into a crisis that nearly destroyed them, and the culprit was their new master. Hearing that, Clash asked who Night Crow's new master really was. The man answered that the person was the Empire's second prince. But Clash immediately sensed that something was wrong. The Imperial family had secretly created Night Crow to suppress the nobles, so it was not strange for a member of the royal family to be Night Crow's master. But if the second prince were truly the one controlling things from behind the scenes, why would he let others find out his identity so easily? It looked far more like someone was using the second prince to spread rumors. And the second prince happened to be an important member of the first prince's faction. Most likely, someone wanted to eliminate the second prince in secret and weaken the first prince's power. In that situation, the only side that stood to benefit was Sigrun. At that dot, Clash was startled. He had not expected Arthur's memory inheritance technique to actually succeed. If the current Sigrun possessed memories of the future, then the person she would target next was most likely Cicely. In Clash's previous life, Sigrun had gone almost insane, trying to offer the throne to Arthur. To stop her, Cicely hid the emblem that symbolized the Emperor's authority, then chose to end her own life. Because of that, Sigrun never got what she wanted in the previous life, and at her hands, the Empire's sin collapsed. At that thought, Clash immediately decided to stop Sigrun's plan and steal her skill. Hearing this, Scarlet Moon also said that when a crucial moment came, she would lend Clash her power. Then Clash decided to find the real Night Crow hiding in the shadows. The world only knew Night Crow as an assassination family that had existed for 1,000 years. But in truth, Night Crow was only one person. As the only necromancer in the world, he had been imprisoned by the Empire for 1,000 years, secretly handling all kinds of dirty work for them from the shadows. The next day, Clash once again crushed his opponent in the tournament. The audience seemed convinced that he came from the Night Crow family, and everyone kept shouting the name Night Crow. But Clash also sensed that the real Night Crow had already appeared. Just as Clash was about to find him, he noticed that Cicely had appeared in the audience as well. Clash had clearly warned her before this, yet she still showed up here. That meant Cicely already had a plan to deal with Sigrun. So all Clash needed to do now was wait for the real Night Crow to come to him. When Clash entered the rest area, he found one of the contestants waiting for him. The man radiated an evil and powerful aura. Is pretending to be Night Crow really that fun? Seeing him, Clash could not help smiling. I didn't expect you to show yourself so quickly. That saves me the trouble of waiting. Hearing that, the man immediately drew 2 daggers. Then he turned into an afterimage and vanished from the spot. By the time he appeared again, he was already in front of Clash. But Clash simply shifted his body slightly and dodged the fierce attack with ease. Then he grabbed the man's wrist directly, stopping him from attacking any further. But then, to everyone's surprise, 2 bone spikes suddenly grew from the man's back. Just as he thought victory was his, Clash kicked out twice in midair and shattered both bone spikes. Little tricks like that won't work on me. Let's talk face to face, Necromancer. When Clash exposed her identity directly, the person controlling things from behind the scenes was stunned. Who exactly was this guy? How did he know her true identity? Before she could recover, Clash continued. Sigrun is holding your heart hostage, isn't she? How about we make a deal? I'll use my skill to help you get your heart back. All I ask in return is that you tell me Sigrun's plan. Necromancer Ilexk. The moment Clash said her name, Ilex could no longer stay calm. As it turned out, Clash had known her in his previous life. Although she was the legendary necromancer, at her core she was just a shut-in who wanted to slack off forever. Then Clash kicked open the door to her room. Seeing him, Ilex immediately curled into herself and hid in the corner. Clash reached out and yanked the blanket off her. Then he grabbed her chin and forced her to lift her head. Ilex asked in a panic, "What are you trying to do? Can you really get my heart back?" In the next moment, intense devouring magic surged from Clash's palm. Countless chains appeared around Ilex. Clash said to her directly, "Ilex, if you allow me to take control of your heart, I can help you steal it back from that person." Hearing that, she shouted yes without the slightest hesitation. Seeing this, Clash told her not to answer too quickly and to imagine it carefully. "You're already sick of this life, aren't you? If you get your heart back, you can do whatever you want. You can hide in your room every day and have fun to your heart's content. But if you don't get your heart back, the rest of your life will be spent as the royal family's puppet, working endlessly without escape." Hearing that, Ilix could no longer endure it. A powerful and ominous necromantic aura erupted from her body. Feeling that power, Clash could not help breaking into a cold sweat. So this was the strength of the legendary necromancer. Ilex growled in despair. "I've been a slave to this work for 1,000 years. Clash gently patted her head, signaling for her to trust him, then urged her to keep going. Ilex practically roared through her tears. "I want to live an interesting life every day. I never want to work day and night ever again." Feeling her determination, Clash finally became confident that he could use devouring magic to take back her heart. Then Clash asked her what Princess Sigrun was plotting. Ilex said the order she received was to control Maid Sarah's corpse and assassinate the little princess, Cicely. And the one responsible for eliminating Sarah was Demilia, Clash's teammate who had betrayed him in his previous life. Before long, a massive puppet walked toward Ilex. "Hurry up and take control of Sarah's corpse. Then assassinate the 4th princess, Cicely." Then Demilia raised her head and looked at the moon in the sky, lost in her memories. On the day before their rebirth in the previous life, Arthur had told them he would let them keep their memories, return to the past with him, and meet at the Statue of Peace. But after being reborn, they waited for a long time, and Arthur never appeared. It was one thing for that woman Abella not to show up. But why would Lord Arthur break his promise? What Demilia did not know was that in the final moment of the previous life, Clash had devoured Arthur's skill and returned to this timeline in his place. Completely unaware of that truth, Demilia had already waited for an entire year. During that time, she had been assisting another former teammate, Sigrun, hoping to take full control of the Empire before Arthur returned and then offer it to him. At that moment, Demilia seemed to remember something and called out to Ilexk, who was carrying Sarah and preparing to leave. "That crow boy in the martial arts tournament. You're controlling his corpse too, aren't you?" By now, Ilex had completely sided with Clash, so she admitted it in order to help cover his identity. Before Ilexk left, Demilia threatened her. "Don't even think about doing anything strange. Even if Princess Sigrun isn't here right now, don't forget that your heart is still in my hands." Watching Ilexk leave, Demilia could not help thinking that this woman usually had terrible taste in the corpses she collected. She never expected Ilexk to be hiding a crow boy, who looked so much like that useless fool. But in the previous life, that useless fool had already been abandoned by them and left behind in that dying world. The next day, Clash finally reached the finals of the martial arts tournament. His opponent looked like an ordinary commoner boy. But Clash knew that in the future, this boy would become an important fighter of the hero generation. And unlike Sigrun's group, he had always been an extremely kind person. He mistakenly believed Clash came from the assassination family Nightcrow. And before making his move, he sincerely tried to persuade Clash to return to a normal life. The instant the match began, Pilly burst forward with incredible speed and closed in on Clash. Then he turned into an afterimage and instantly changed the direction of his attack. But Clash saw through it and blocked the strike from behind. Seeing this, Pilly was shocked. He never expected that move to be read so easily. And the battle that followed frightened him even more, because he realized Clash seemed to know his techniques extremely well and could always block his attacks in the simplest way possible. Then, Clash gathered his magic, swung the greatsword in his hand, and knocked Pilly's weapon away with overwhelming force. "Pilly, your talent has already begun to bloom. From now on, become strong enough to endure. Only then, even when your hope is shattered, will a seed of hope still remain." Then Clash used the secret technique, Short Force, and ended the fight immediately. Lying on the ground, Pilly asked, "Will we have another chance to meet again?" Hearing that, Clash could not help remembering his previous life. Back then, Pilly had been one of the few friends he had, and unlike the others from the hero generation, every time Clash absorbed his curse, Pilly would sincerely thank him. He would also say that he would never let Clash's help go to waste, and that he would work even harder to protect the world. Thinking of that, Clash replied, "We'll meet again at Rahal Academy." At that moment, the second prince in the stands burst into laughter. As expected of Nightcrow, "I didn't think he would win the martial arts tournament so easily." He could already picture his future self taking the throne with Nightcrow's help. But just then, a group of black-clad knights stormed toward him. The one leading them was Demilia. "We hereby arrest you on suspicion of murdering 4th Princess Cicely." Hearing that, the second prince roared in fury. "Why would I murder that idiot? You people must have made a mistake." Demilia said coldly, "In Ilix's hideout, we already found the assassination order you issued." "What nonsense are you talking about? When did I ever write something like that?" Then, Demilia turned to Ilexk and said coldly, "Are you still not going to confess? Weren't you the one who controlled Sarah's corpse and murdered the 4th princess?" But at that moment, Sarah and Cicely walked over. "Since when did I become a corpse and assassinate her highness? As you can see, we're both very much alive." Seeing this, Demilia's face filled with shock. She had clearly killed Sarah herself, so how had Sarah come back completely unharmed? What exactly happened during that time? As it turned out, before Sarah encountered Demilia, Scarlet Moon had found her first. She temporarily granted Sarah the power of immortality and told her to play dead after being attacked. At first, Sarah was confused when she heard someone was coming after her. But an instant later, she saw Demilia storming toward her, so she followed Scarlet Moon's instructions, played dead, and successfully fooled her. Then, Cicely immediately gave the order for Sarah to arrest the vice commander of the Black Dragon Knight Order, and the charge was colluding with foreign enemies and plotting against the royal family. Then Sarah drew her sword in an instant and charged straight at the man. With a single slash, she shattered his heavy armor on the spot. At that moment, Demilia still had not recovered from her shock. She could not understand it at all. Sigrun's plan had been so carefully arranged, so how had this most insignificant little princess managed to defuse the entire crisis? She realized that Cicely would likely become the biggest obstacle from here on out. So Demilia immediately decided that no matter the cost, she had to eliminate Cicely right then and there. She reached out toward Ilex's magic heart. Then she ordered Ilex to eliminate Cicely immediately, no matter what it took. Because her heart was still under Demilia's control, Ilex could not resist at all. A massive surge of necromantic magic erupted, summoning countless puppets. But right then, the dark, devouring magic silently wrapped around Demilia. An instant later, she was shocked to discover that Ilex's heart had vanished into thin air. Without it, Demilia could no longer control Ilex. What was going on? First, their flawless plan had been exposed. Now even the necromancer they had controlled for 1,000 years had broken free. Unable to process it all, Demilia stopped thinking and chose to eliminate Cicely by force. She activated her acceleration skill and attacked with her spear in hand. But at the critical moment, a black sword blocked her strike just in time. Sarah hurriedly stepped in to protect the princess. She was shocked to realize that even as an aura master, she had failed to react in time. Demilia was even more stunned. In her previous life, the reason she had been called the strongest spear was because of this very skill. Yet this person had actually kept up with her speed. Clash said, "Keeping up with your speed is difficult, sure, but your simple way of thinking hasn't changed at all. I can guess your attack path without much effort." Hearing that, Demilia asked in panic, "Who are you? How do you know me?" But while she was stunned, the knights had already rushed forward and restrained her. Seeing that defeat was inevitable, Demilia could only hope that Princess Sigrun would save her. After that, Cicely hurried over to Clash and asked how badly he was hurt. Clash looked at his trembling hands and was also surprised. He had used the Flame of Destruction to defend himself, yet he still got injured. It seems the Aura Master realm really was absurdly powerful. Looking at Cicely's worried face, Clash comforted her. "It's just a minor injury. As long as you're safe, that's all that matters." Then, under Clash's command, Ilex used necromancy to teleport them away. Cicely had not expected him to leave without even giving her time to thank him. But he had said earlier that he was going to Rahel Academy, right? Then, they would meet again there. And when that time came, Cicely would properly repay this debt, even if it meant giving herself to him. Meanwhile, Clash and the others had already boarded the carriage. The golden dragon grass needed to refine the elixir was finally in their hands. Ilex, who was beside him, was shocked when Clash suddenly returned her heart to her. In her mind, Clash would definitely control her just like the royal family had. She never expected him to simply give her freedom back. Just as Clash was about to get some proper rest, Scarlet Moon suddenly told him some bad news. His fiancée, Bianca, was currently in danger, and her life was hanging by a thread. On top of that, before Bianca disappeared, the Butcher Hound had also entered that mountain range. So Clash immediately gave the order to head for the Harden family in the far north. When Necromancer Ilex learned that Clash actually had a fiancé, she was extremely surprised. "I heard the youngest son of the Valheim family is also engaged to a daughter of the Harden family. I can't believe they would marry their daughter into such a terrifying family." Hearing that, Clash removed his disguise and revealed his true form. "Actually, I'm that youngest son of the Valheim family you're talking about." The moment she heard that, Ilex completely panicked. She had finally escaped the royal family's control, only to fall into the hands of the even more terrifying Valheim family. At the same time, Clash had already asked Scarlet Moon to control a servant and find out exactly what had happened. As it turned out, a few days earlier, Bianca had learned about the frost snow mushroom from her second older sister, Jenica. After that, she took her equipment and entered the forbidden snowy mountain alone. After hearing the news, Jenica immediately led people out to find her. "I'll have someone find what that failure wants. You need to come back with me right now." But Bianca said seriously, "Mr. Clash is not a failure. He is my fiancé. And why did you come yourself, sister? You could have simply ordered a rescue team to come." Hearing that, Jenica replied haughtily, "That's none of your business. Anyway, I'll have someone help you find the frost snow mushroom. For now, all you need to do is come back with me. I don't want to see your face, so once you get the item, hurry up and go back to the Valheim family." After hearing Jenica's words, Bianca seriously apologized. "Sister, you're right. After all, Mother died giving birth to me." Hearing that, Jenica felt a sharp pain in her heart. She wanted to explain, but suddenly an unbearably evil aura came from behind them. In an instant, all the guards were slaughtered. The sudden scene left Jenica completely frozen in place. The only surviving guard desperately grabbed onto the Butcher Hound and shouted for the two of them to run. Fortunately, because of her curse, Bianca was still able to remain calm. She quickly grabbed Jenica and ran into the distance. The Butcher Hound seemed to enjoy the feeling of hunting, so he did not chase them immediately. Instead, he deliberately let them run for a while. At that moment, Jenica suddenly remembered that there was a massive glacier crevice zone nearby. If they crossed it, they could return to the family in the shortest possible time. But by the time they reached the edge of the crevice, the Butcher Hound had already caught up. Seeing this, Bianca dragged Jenica with her and jumped down. When they looked closely, there was actually an open space below. Right after that, the butcher hound jumped down as well. At that moment, Bianca comforted Jenica and said, "It's okay. Just leave everything to me." Before Jenica could understand what she meant, Bianca suddenly grabbed the butcher hound and leapt straight into the bottomless glacier crevice. After an unknown number of days, Bianca, already pushed to her limit, lay curled up on a pile of grass. Half conscious, she murmured, "Clash, I want to see you one more time." She struggled for a long time before finally forcing herself awake. Several days had already passed since she fell to the bottom of the valley. During that time, Bianca had endured the pain and kept searching for a way out. Along the way, she accidentally discovered a patch of grass full of life, and that was exactly where the frost snow mushroom grew. Great, she had finally found what Clash wanted, but she was far too exhausted. All these days she had endured pain and freezing cold, and worst of all, she had no food. Suddenly, Bianca noticed what looked like a pine nut on the ground. Just as she bent down to pick it up, an axe came flying through the air and chopped down the tree behind her. It turned out the butcher hound had found her first. Then he grabbed Bianca by the neck and lifted her up. "I didn't expect you to waste so much of my time, but this ends now." At that moment, memories of living together with Clash surfaced in Bianca's mind. Because of her curse, she could not express emotion, but that only made her feel that comfort and happiness even more deeply. "Clash, I really miss you." A split second later, Clash arrived and punched the butcher hound, freeing Bianca from his grip. "Bianca, you did great. You held on until now. Leave everything else to me." Then Clash told Scarlet Moon and Ilex to take care of Bianca. After that, he continued gathering devouring magic and prepared for battle. Clash knew very well that the butcher hound in front of him was far stronger than he was, but there was no way he would let this bastard off after hurting Bianca. The two of them immediately entered a fierce battle, and every clash of weapons rang out with a heavy clang. "Little Valheim brat, let's see how long you can last." Then, the butcher hound seized an opening and kicked Clash away. But an instant later, he realized Clash had vanished. Just as he searched for Clash, Clash burst out from the snow behind him. Catching him off guard, Clash used short force and struck straight at his heart. The attack injured the butcher hound, but it was not enough to kill him, so Clash immediately activated his flame skill and chased after him with endless fire surging around him. But an instant later, Clash felt as if all his senses had been stripped away, leaving him trapped in total darkness. This was the butcher hound's skill, Phantom Bind. Then, the butcher hound swung his axe and attacked Clash. But to his shock, Clash blocked the attack purely on instinct. That made the butcher hound grow even more cautious, because as time passed, the effects of Phantom Bind would only become stronger. Seeing Clash's injuries grow worse and worse, Ilex, who was disguised as a sparrow nearby, hesitated. If she interfered in this fight, she would likely offend the butcher hound's master. That monster would definitely hunt her down without end. But after thinking seriously for a moment, Ilex made up her mind. "I'm not some ungrateful coward. He helped me break free from 1,000 years of captivity under the Empire. How can I just watch my savior die right in front of me?" But just as she was about to act, Scarlet Moon stopped her. "Don't interfere with his fight. Trust the kid. He has the mental strength to endure until the end." Hearing that, Ilex said with tears in her eyes, "Then fight as hard as you want. Even if the butcher hound really kills you, I'll use necromancy to bring you back." At that moment, Clash had already reached his limit. Although he could still use the secret art Sixth Sense to track his enemies' movements, he had already burned through too much magic. From here on, he could only trust his instincts. Then, Clash seized the timing and wildly drew in otherworldly corruptive energy, converting it into his own magic, but doing so forcibly pushed his body beyond its limits. At this point, he could probably only maintain it for 3 seconds. Just as Clash's terrifying slash was about to land on the butcher hound, a strange sound suddenly burst from the butcher hound's mouth. Thrown off by the sound, Clash's slash veered off course. Seeing this, the butcher hound decisively swung his claws, trying to finish Clash off for good. With no time to dodge, Clash could only drive his devouring magic to its limit and defend himself. But the instant the two powers collided, a strange energy shockwave erupted, and both of their arms were severed at the same time. Yet, in that final life-or-death moment, Clash entered the legendary state of absolute unity. At that moment, it was as if he could draw on every force in nature. Then, Clash thrust his sword forward and completely killed the butcher hound. Scarlet Moon, who witnessed the scene, was beyond shocked. She never expected Clash to push himself this far. The strong could crush the weak with ease, But if the weak wanted victory, they had to pay a brutal price. In Clash's previous life, although he and Bianca had been engaged, they rarely interacted. It was only after their engagement was later broken off that they finally had a chance to meet again. Back then, the head of the Harden family suddenly lost his mind and began slaughtering everyone. Bianca was the sole survivor only because her sister Jenica sacrificed herself to protect her. After that, the Harden family, rulers of the far north, completely fell into decline, and the Valheim family unilaterally ended Clash and Bianca's engagement. Clash angrily said that it had all been the family's decision, and he had known nothing about it. But Bianca only asked him one question calmly. Which is more painful, having emotions or having none at all? Clash said that in Bianca's current state, if the curse was removed and she suddenly regained her emotions, she would probably collapse in an instant. But Bianca only looked at him calmly. She had lost everything, yet she felt completely numb. That unnatural emptiness was almost suffocating her, so she wanted Clash to devour the Snowdoll curse inside her. I've warned you plenty of times. If you regain your emotions and run off to get yourself killed, don't expect me to save you. Then, Clash activated his devouring magic and consumed the curse inside her. The moment he devoured it, Clash felt an enormous surge of otherworldly corruption. Just as he was about to ask Bianca how she felt, his eyes widened at the sight in front of him. Because the instant Bianca gained emotions, she turned into a monster. In the end, she only said one thing to him. This world really is cruel. 3 years later, the war between the Harden family and the Empire fully erupted. As it turned out, the reason Bianca's father had lost his mind and started slaughtering people back then was because the Poison King had secretly poisoned him. At first, the Empire's second prince had defected for unknown reasons, and he possessed extremely important information. To prevent that information from leaking, the Empire sent out the Poison King. And during that process, the tragedy of the Harden family unfolded. By now, Bianca had become the White Demon and personally killed the Poison King. But the Empire clearly had no intention of letting Bianca's flames of revenge spread toward the royal family. So they sent a massive army to surround and eliminate her. After Clash heard the news, he rushed to the far north at once. He narrowly avoided pursuit and blockades again and again. Finally, he arrived at the North Sea Ice Palace where Bianca was located. By then, the entire place had already been reduced to ruins. But Clash never even got the chance to enter. Suddenly, countless ice spikes erupted and slaughtered all the pursuers behind him. Bianca stood there with a blade stabbed through her chest. Her body trembled uncontrollably from the pain, but she still forced a smile and said to Clash, "Long time no see, Clash." Before her voice even fully faded, she could no longer hold on and collapsed to the ground. Clash rushed forward and held her in his arms. With the last of her strength, Bianca said, "Do you remember the question I asked you back then? Which is more painful, having emotions or having none at all?" On the day the Harden family tragedy happened, Sister Jenica hid me inside a box. She kept crying and apologizing to me, saying she had never hated me. But back then, I had no emotions, so I couldn't understand what she meant. Even when all my closest family members died, I didn't feel the slightest sadness. Only after the curse was lifted did I truly understand that soul-crushing pain. If only I had regained my emotions sooner, then I could have spent happy days with my family. Maybe things wouldn't have ended in tragedy. Then Bianca looked at Clash with tears streaming down her face, whispering again and again that the two of them could have made it to the end together. But now, all she could do was imagine the scene of their wedding in her mind before falling into eternal sleep. At that moment, Clash slowly woke from his sleep. A small hand had been resting gently on the back of his hand the entire time. As it turned out, while he was unconscious, Bianca had been watching over him by his bedside. She poked out her little head and asked sweetly, "Clash, does your arm still hurt?" Clash reached out and gently placed the hair ornament that the butcher hound had taken from her back into her hair. Then he patted her head and comforted her. "It stopped hurting a long time ago. I barely feel anything." But then Bianca placed her hand over her own chest and said, "Clash, I don't have emotions. Even though you were badly injured while saving me, I still couldn't feel anger or sadness. That makes me feel awful. I don't want to stay expressionless at a time like this. From now on, I want to laugh with you and cry with you." Hearing that, a faint smile touched Clash's lips. Then, just like in his previous life, he used devouring magic on Bianca. An instant later, the Snowdoll curse inside Bianca was completely devoured. The instant she gained emotions, Bianca's eyes widened as feelings she had never experienced before surged through her like a crashing tide. Seeing this, Clash smiled and opened his arms to her. Immediately, Bianca threw herself into his arms with tears streaming down her face, whispering again and again, "Being able to feel emotions is so wonderful." After regaining her emotions, she cried until her eyes were red and swollen, before finally stopping. She kept murmuring that this was what sadness and joy felt like, and that both were unbelievably strange and beautiful. Suddenly, a knock came from the door. The one who came was Bianca's older sister, Jenica. When her gaze landed on Clash's severed arm, she could not help being startled. Jenica quickly looked away and said the family meeting required Bianca's attendance. Throughout the entire exchange, she did not dare look Bianca in the eye, because if Bianca had not tried to save her earlier, she would never have fallen into such danger. That filled Jenica with guilt and self-blame. So she hurried away, almost as if she were fleeing. Clash also keenly noticed the change in Jenica. In his previous life, Jenica had always acted as if she hated Bianca, but at the final moment, she had sacrificed her life to protect her younger sister. And in this life, because of what happened, the relationship between the two sisters would probably improve greatly. Then Clash looked at Bianca seriously and said, "No matter what they say at this family meeting, if you don't like it, you don't have to listen. If you don't want to stay with the Harden family after this, we'll go back to Lansong Estate together." After hearing that, Bianca froze for a long while. Then, she covered her face with both hands and rocked from side to side, looking extremely anxious. She wanted to form a proper expression, but for someone who had just regained her emotions, that was still rather difficult. So she used 2 fingers to help herself form a bright smile. "Clash, I feel so happy right now." After Bianca left, Scarlet Moon looked at Clash with a scowl and said, "Do you still remember our agreement? I help you grow stronger until you can devour my immortality. But now, you've lost your right hand. How are you supposed to keep that promise?" Clash casually waved his stump and told her not to worry, because he had 2 ways to restore his arm completely. The first was the Holy Kingdom, one of the 4 great kingdoms. Rumor had it that a saintess lived there in seclusion, and she was an expert in sacred healing magic. Regrowing a severed limb would be no problem for her. However, given Clash's current situation, getting help from the saintess would probably be difficult. So he still felt the second option was more reliable. That was to have Ilex attach someone else's arm to him. For her, the only necromancer in the world, that was not difficult at all. When Ilex heard Clash praising her, she grinned and told him to leave it to her. Scarlet Moon also thought it was a decent method, then asked Clash whose arm he planned to attach. Was it the Butcher Hound's arm from earlier? Clash said the Butcher Hound's potential was far too low. His real target was the legendary figure known as the Ghost Sword. After all, the Ghost Sword had left behind countless undefeated legends. His lightning-fast swordsmanship alone was enough to make people tremble in fear. When Scarlet Moon heard that Clash's target was the Ghost Sword, her expression showed not only shock, but also anger. Because the Ghost Sword had once been the servant she treasured most. As an immortal, cursed by the otherworldly immortal, Scarlet Moon's true body had been forced into eternal sleep. That meant she could only experience the outside world through her servants, and during that process, she would always end up forming deep bonds with them. In Clash's previous life, Arthur and the others dealt with Scarlet Moon by threatening the lives of her servants. That was how they forced her to reveal the location of her true body. And the Ghost Sword had been the servant who stayed with her the longest, so she would never allow anyone to desecrate his remains. Seeing this, Clash smiled and said that if he attached the Ghost Sword's arm, he could surely recreate that invincible swordsmanship. She would not want the Ghost Sword's legacy to end there, would she? Hearing that, Scarlet Moon's expression stiffened. Clearly, those words had struck her where it hurt. The Ghost Sword had been powerful, but no one had ever managed to reproduce his sword techniques, and that had always remained one of Scarlet Moon's regrets. Clash immediately pressed further, saying that if he attached the Ghost Sword's arm, he would definitely revive his swordsmanship and make the world remember that invincible swordsman once again. Hearing this, Scarlet Moon silently turned away. Only after a long while did she finally speak. "If you disgrace the Ghost Sword's name, don't blame me for being ruthless." There was a faint tremor hidden in her voice. After settling that matter, Clash lazily lay down on the bed. Then he suddenly thought about how the recent incidents would probably make both the Valheim and Harden families reevaluate him, which would inevitably affect his engagement with Bianca. So Clash had Ilex infiltrate the Harden family meeting to gather information for him. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bianca's older brother, Meli, was serving as the acting family head. He announced that the marriage partner for the Valheim family would be changed from Bianca to Jenica. Before he could even finish speaking, Bianca said directly, "I reject this decision. I am Mr. Clash's fiancé." Hearing that, Meli loudly scolded Bianca for being arrogant, saying this was the family's decision and that she had no right to speak. But Bianca did not back down. She looked straight into Melly's eyes and said seriously that she would never give up. "You idiot. Have you still not realized how serious this is? Clash's bloodline has begun to awaken. In the future, he will definitely become an important figure in the Valheim family. A cursed failure like you, someone who can't even express emotions, is destined to be abandoned by him. In that case, it would be better to have your older sister replace you and marry him instead." Just then, Clash barged straight into the Harden family's meeting hall. "Sorry about this, brother-in-law, but Bianca is my fiancée. No one gets to change that." Hearing that, Melly was just about to persuade him when Clash raised 2 fingers toward him. "There are 2 ways the outside world can hear about me killing the Butcher Hound. The first version is that I sacrificed 1 arm to protect my fiancée, Bianca, and kill the enemy. The second version is that because of the Harden family's negligence, the Butcher Hound managed to sever the arm of the youngest son of the Valheim family. If the second version becomes the accepted truth, I imagine the Harden family's reputation will take a serious hit, and more importantly, the Valheim family will see you as enemies. After all, because of your negligence, a direct descendant of Valheim nearly died. I believe that as the acting head of the Harden family, you'll make the correct choice. So I want the decision over this engagement to be left to Bianca herself." Before Clash even finished speaking, Bianca hurriedly stood up and ran over to him. Seeing this, Melly was deeply confused. Was this guy really not going to abandon Bianca? Bianca stood behind Clash, her small hand tightly gripping his arm, as if silently declaring her decision to Melly. Seeing that, Melly let out a helpless sigh. "In that case, I can only choose to trust you, but you'll still need to convince the Valheim family yourself." Clash said that would not be a problem at all, and that they could leave Bianca safely in his hands. After they left, Jenica finally snapped back to her senses and said in shock, "Brother, did you notice it just now?" Bianca still looked as cold as before, but after Clash appeared, it felt like there was an expression on her face that I'd never seen before. Meanwhile, inside the Valheim family, a large hand covered in scars set down a letter. From his hairstyle, it was not hard to tell that he was Clash's demigod father, a man standing at the peak of the world. "My youngest son, Clash, what exactly happened to you?" To transplant the Ghost Sword's arm, Clash trained harshly in an extremely cold environment to make the training more efficient. He not only activated devouring magic, but even used blood rush poison. 2 terrifying energies clashed violently around the stump of his severed arm, making every movement, even every breath, feel unbearably heavy. But this kind of training would not only greatly enhance his physical body, it would also help him master the poison sword's secret art, a technique that gathered all of one's power into the blade. Once the Ghost Sword's arm was transplanted, Clash could try fusing this technique with the Ghost Sword's invincible swordsmanship, which would surely unleash unmatched power. Of course, reaching that point would be extremely difficult, but Clash was not disappointed by that. After all, being able to comprehend the flame of world destruction during his battle with the Butcher Hound had already been a miracle. The reason the flame of world destruction could multiply Clash's strength several times over in a short period was that it used his flame skill to ignite his own magic, breaking through his physical limits and allowing him to contain even more otherworldly corruption. But its weakness was just as obvious. Once he used it, Clash's body temperature would continue to rise, pushing his body to the brink of collapse almost instantly. That was the problem Clash had to solve now. After all, this secret art was far too powerful for him to simply abandon. Then Clash thought to himself that if he could control his own heat while using the flame of world destruction, he could reduce the side effects and extend the burst duration. Right after that, the name Lunar Yin Body surfaced in his mind. It was a special constitution, formed only after being naturally corrupted by moon magic. This constitution, which symbolized extreme yin power, could perfectly counterbalance the flame of world destruction. However, the person who currently possessed that constitution had an extraordinary background, so for now, Clash had to focus on transplanting the Ghost Sword's arm first. Sometime later, Clash and Scarlet Moon followed the information Ilex had sent and arrived before a large tree. Scarlet Moon knocked on the trunk, and a doorway suddenly appeared out of thin air. Then a maid with rabbit ears walked out. She was one of Ilex's disciples, sent here to receive them. "Lord Clash, my master has been waiting for your arrival." After that, they entered the tree together. What came into view was Necromancer Ilex, and placed beside her was the Ghost Sword's arm. Earlier, Scarlet Moon had taken the arm from her garden and handed it to Ilex so she could prepare it for the transplant. Before starting, however, Ilex warned Clash that during the transplant both sets of nerves would need to be connected, which meant he would feel unimaginable pain. If Clash could not endure it, she could knock him unconscious. The moment she finished speaking, the maid walked over holding a massive iron hammer. Clearly, when Ilix said she could knock him unconscious, she meant it in the most physical way possible. Then countless streams of necromantic magic surged from Ilix's hands, slowly enveloping and connecting Clash with the ghost sword's severed arm. The instant their nerves connected, Clash felt an extreme pain, as if his flesh were being torn apart and healed, over and over again. To stay conscious and fuse with the arm as perfectly as possible, Clash could only bite down hard on the cloth in his mouth. Seeing that, Ilix finally felt reassured enough to increase her magic output. Suddenly, the pain spiked violently, almost making Clash black out. Fortunately, he gritted his teeth and endured it. Not long after, Ilix announced that the transplant had been successfully completed. Hearing that, Clash slowly moved the arm. At this point, ordinary daily movements were already no problem at all. Then he used that arm to channel devouring magic. The dried-up arm suddenly burst with life. Before long, it fully fused with Clash, adjusting to a size that perfectly matched his body. There was almost no trace of the transplant left. Seeing this, Scarlet Moon could not wait any longer and told him to hurry up and practice the ghost sword's invincible swordsmanship. Clash could barely suppress his own excitement, so he agreed immediately. But Ilix, standing nearby, looked furious. "I'm obviously the one who made this happen, yet you two are ignoring me and only thinking about some stupid swordsmanship. Am I just some follower you can summon and dismiss whenever you want?" Hearing that, Scarlet Moon said she had a secret art that could grant a necromancer combat ability. The moment Ilix heard this, her eyes lit up. As the only necromancer in the world, she had always struggled to find secret arts left behind by other necromancers. For years, she had relied on controlling subordinates to fight, while her own combat ability was not that strong. This would perfectly make up for her weakness, so she enthusiastically ordered the maid to take Clash to the hidden training ground. On the way to the training ground, Scarlet Moon asked Clash how much he knew about the ghost sword. Clash said he knew almost nothing, only that the man had once been an invincible swordsman, and nearly everything he knew came from stories told by others. Hearing that, Scarlet Moon angrily smacked Clash on the head. "You're a regressor, and you still don't know this?" Clash replied that the ghost sword had died long before he was even born, so how could he possibly know much about him? Hearing that, Scarlet Moon sighed helplessly, then began teaching Clash the essence of the ghost sword's swordsmanship. The ghost sword's technique was actually to inject magic into the scabbard, then draw the blade, packed with terrifying energy, in a single explosive instant. To outsiders, it looked like nothing more than an ordinary quick-draw slash. But in reality, the only person who had ever truly pulled it off was the ghost sword himself. The essence of the technique was to inject magic into the scabbard, divide it into countless tiny particles, then make those particles collide and explode against one another. That compressed the magic inside the scabbard to the absolute limit. The instant the blade was drawn, the impact generated by that magic would propel the sword to incredible speed. That burst of destructive power was the key to the ghost sword's invincible reputation. Then Clash followed Scarlet Moon's explanation, injecting magic into the scabbard and splitting it apart. He continued, until the scabbard reached the limit of how much magic it could contain, and began trembling violently. Realizing the critical moment had arrived, Clash suddenly drew the sword from the scabbard and slashed. The overwhelming force split the supposedly indestructible training ground cleanly in two. Seeing this, Clash was extremely satisfied. Even with just an initial attempt, the power was already this astonishing. If he could master this invincible swordsmanship completely, it would surely unleash unimaginable destructive power. At that moment, Ilix walked over with a grin and asked Clash whether he was satisfied with the arm she had transplanted. Clash said it was perfect, then told her that he planned to return to the Valheim family next. Hearing that, Ilix turned pale with shock, because she had always been terrified of the strongest family, especially since the current family head was an absolute master at the demigod realm. Thinking of this, Clash also felt troubled. If he brought Ilix back with him, the old monsters in the family would probably notice her instantly. After all, unlike Scarlet Moon, she did not possess extremely powerful concealment abilities. Back then, it was precisely because she was discovered by the Empire that she had been forced to work non-stop for 1,000 years. Just thinking about it made Ilix shudder. After all, the Valheim family was even more terrifying than the Empire. So, Clash suggested that she did not need to return to the family with him. Instead, she could hide for now in the deserted, far north. Besides, the Poison King would soon descend upon this place. In his previous life, it was the Poison King who poisoned the head of the Hardened family, driving him insane and causing him to slaughter Bianca's family. Ilix's next task was to save the head of the Hardened family. Hearing this, she felt deeply uncertain. Could someone with her strength really deal with the Poison King? Clash said she did not need to fight him head-on. She only needed to prevent the hardened family head from being poisoned and losing his mind. After all, she was the only necromancer in the world, and Clash believed this should be easy for her. Hearing Clash praise her, Aniclimax blushed and confidently promised to handle it. Although she had originally cooperated with Clash to retrieve her heart, deep down, she had always been grateful to him. Watching Clash leave, Aniclimax stood there in a daze. Once, she had also been one of the invaders who brought corruption to this world. Back then, she had traveled everywhere with a group of companions. They had wanted to witness the scenery of countless worlds, but that was already a very long time ago. Clash and Bianca returned to Lanson Estate from the far north. Because of the long journey, Bianca had already fallen asleep in a daze, so Clash could only carry her into the mansion. Then, the butler delivered bad news to Clash. Clash's recent actions had drawn the family's attention, and they had decided to send the chief butler over. Hearing that, Clash immediately felt that something was wrong. This chief butler was no ordinary servant, holding the highest position among all the butlers. She was also responsible for evaluating the talents of direct family members, and the scores she gave were always watched closely by those in power within the family. Until now, Clash's ranking had always been the lowest, but his recent performance had been far too abnormal, especially after he killed the incredibly powerful Butcher Hound. That was why the family had decided to reevaluate him. Still, Clash was not too worried. After all, he would soon need the family's power to confront the person with the Lure Yin body. Then, the butler continued reporting that Lord Darling Lian had already finished preparing to refine the potion. Hearing that, Clash was just about to tell the butler to inform her that he had returned when he noticed a flash of panic on the butler's face. After asking carefully, Clash learned that while he had been away, his older sister Charlotte had moved into his room. The moment Clash heard that, he was about to run away, only for a black figure to descend from above. Seeing this, Clash knew things were bad. He forced a smile onto his face and called out to his sister, but Charlotte only laughed with a hint of mockery in her voice. "It's been a long time, little brother. Your dear sister was getting bored waiting for you." Only then did Clash realize in shock that Charlotte had already reached the master level. Even across the entire history of the Valheim family, very few people had ever reached the master level at her age. And the real reason Clash saw her as a monster was because Charlotte had refused to form a contract with any god, reaching the absolute peak through swordsmanship alone. Charlotte slowly approached Clash and said, "I've heard some interesting rumors about you lately, little brother. They say you become a real warrior and even threw yourself into battle for your fiancé." As she spoke, she reached out and poked the sleeping Bianca with one finger. Seeing this, Clash held Bianca and took 2 steps back. With Charlotte's personality, it was hard to predict what she might do next. Charlotte knowingly withdrew her hand. "Relax. I won't hurt the little girl. After all, she's your precious fiancé." "Sister? What are you doing here? I hate it when people barge into my home uninvited." Hearing that, Charlotte stomped down and shattered the floor. "My little brother really has grown up. Not only do you dare look at me like that, you're even mocking me as an uninvited guest. Remember this. This is Valheim territory. And yet I returned to my own home only to be treated like this by you. How disrespectful." Her arrogant expression made it look as if she were the true master of the Valheim family. Clash instinctively grew more cautious, because Charlotte could attack at any moment. Unlike their father's cold gaze, Charlotte's personality was more like their mother, Arya. In fact, Clash resembled her in that regard as well, since they were blood siblings. But Charlotte was full of contradictions, making it hard for ordinary people to guess what she was truly thinking. Just like now, she looked angry on the surface, but deep down, there was a trace of amusement. "I thought we siblings were close, but I never expected you to hide the fact that you made a contract with a god." Hearing that, Clash's expression grew heavier. He knew Charlotte had awakened the mind's eye, a skill only those with extraordinary talent had any hope of mastering, and it possessed the ability to see through almost anything. But what shocked Clash even more was what Charlotte said next. "How strange. I can sense an ominous aura coming from you." The moment Clash heard that, he immediately grew tense. Had she already awakened the next stage of the mind's eye, the star eye? That was a terrifying ability, capable of piercing even otherworldly corruption and seeing through the true nature of things. Fortunately, Clash's Devour ability had already converted all of the corruptive power inside him into his own strength. Because of that, he would not be judged as an otherworldly corruptor. Charlotte reached out and pinched Clash's chin. "Looks like my precious little brother is hiding quite a few secrets. First, send this little girl back to her room. Then we'll go to the training ground and have a proper match." As she spoke, she released her magic without a sound. Clash knew Charlotte was the type who would never stop until she got what she wanted. So he went to the training ground, as she wished. For some reason, Clash felt unusually nervous. After all, even before he was born, Charlotte had already been praised as the hope of the family, but he quickly calmed himself down. Even if he could not win, he would never submit. Charlotte chuckled, as expected of my little brother. I thought you might run away. Clash replied. If I ran, you'd chase me all the way to the end of hell. Then, Charlotte raised the wooden sword in her hand. Looks like you understand my personality pretty well. That makes me like you even more. But I advise you to use everything you've got, or I won't let you off easily. The moment she finished speaking, Charlotte stepped forward and attacked Clash at high speed. Facing such an astonishing assault, Clash remained unusually calm. He suddenly opened his eyes wide. As he poured flame magic wildly into the scabbard, a vicious, ghostly face totem appeared on the back of his hand. The instant he drew the sword, the flames turned black, filled with a wild and destructive aura. What Clash used was the powerful swordsmanship that had once made the ghost sword invincible. Despite moving second, he struck first, slashing straight toward her. Seeing this, Charlotte was genuinely surprised. She had never seen swordsmanship this absurd before. An instant later, their weapons collided. After that exchange, Clash decisively raised his sword high. Then, he brought it down with brutal force, unleashing a violent burst of sword energy. Charlotte tried to intercept it, but the wooden sword in her hand was cut apart. But after seeing that, the smile on her face only grew more manic. She condensed a blade with magic and continued fighting. My precious little brother really has brought me quite the surprise. Then, Charlotte suddenly released her strength and knocked the weapon out of Clash's hand with one slash. But Clash was not surprised at all. He immediately activated devouring magic and launched another attack. Under the pull of that powerful suction force, the weapon that had been knocked away suddenly pierced through Clash's palm and shot toward Charlotte. She had never expected Clash to use a move like that. By the time she reacted, the blade was already pressed against her neck.